Shalom from Israel. I'm Women's Division Chair, Laura Orzi, and I'm speaking to you from Tel Aviv. I'm delighted to welcome you to this very special event. We all know Israel is the land of well-renowned archaeological sites, from Masada to the city of David and Beit Sha'an to Caesarea. Today, we're going to don our virtual Indiana Jones fedoras and explore a site perhaps not as well known, but certainly remarkable in its own right as those just mentioned, the ancient Talmudic village of Korazaim. Normally, we would all be visiting the site together in Israel, and I might add, sweating in the 80-degree temperatures, which we are still enjoying. But because of COVID, only a few of us were able to participate in this live tour. And so now we will share this with you. With the synagogue dating back 1700 years, it's the perfect way to culminate the just ended holiday period and draw closer to Israel, the Jewish homeland and birthplace of the heritage and traditions that have endured for thousands of years. Throughout the program, you will see phone numbers and websites for Israel bonds in the US, Canada, and abroad to assist you in making an investment in Israel bonds. You will also see a QR code. Simply hold up your phone over it, and the US website, israelbonds.com, will appear on your browser. We begin our program in a way that truly highlights our unity with Israel. Please listen to the impactful words and appreciation for Israel bonds from His Excellency Reuven Rivlin, President of the State of Israel.
My dear friends at Israel Bonds, this past year has been one of highs and lows. Only 9 months ago, around 50 world leaders came together here in Jerusalem to mark the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, committing to fighting anti-Semitism and preserving the memory of the Holocaust. Unfortunately, since then, we have all been dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. We have lost loved ones. Our schools, synagogues, and community centers have been closed, and we still face great uncertainty about the future. As the new year begins, we are all hoping and praying that we will once again be able to meet each other in person and return to our normal lives. Dear friends, this has also been a year of peace. The historic Abraham Accords, signed by Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, can provide a model for peaceful coexistence between all peoples and religions around the world. I hope very much that this new spirit of cooperation will help us move forward with our Palestinian neighbors and with all the countries of the Middle East as well. May the coming year be a year in which the bonds between Israel and the diaspora grow stronger and stronger. I want to thank the leaders, members, and supporters of the Israeli bonds for all that you do for Israel. So happy holidays. Chag Sameach, as we say. Chag Sameach from Jerusalem.
Good afternoon, good morning, whichever you choose. My name is Bobbie Goldstein. I am a former National Israel Bond chairperson. I'd like to thank you, President Rivlin, for your warm words. You have always graciously opened your door to Beit Hanassi for the Israel Bond community. For many of us who have always enjoyed visiting Israel with family and friends, and of course, Israel Bond delegations, we are saddened by the inability to continue the frequency of our visits. Today, as we explore the visit to Korazaim, the new normal known as Zoom, we share our love of Israel as we come together as one. President Rivlin reminds us that all Jews worldwide support in their united efforts for the State of Israel bonds. I feel honored to present Benny Gantz, Israel's alternate prime minister and defense minister, as well as a leader of the Blue and White Party. Benny distinguishes himself as a former chief of staff and was renowned through his 4 decades of IDF service. His leadership as a soldier of strength, courage, and determination has been rightfully recognized. We look forward to the Deputy Prime Minister's remarks, and I personally want to thank him for joining us today.
My friends, shalom to you all. Many of you may know that I am not the first defense minister to express appreciation to Israel bonds. Actually, the very first defense minister to do so was David Ben-Gurion 70 years ago. It was Ben-Gurion himself who first realized the enormous potential of this project and who planted the seeds for it to develop into an incredible operation it became. $45 billion in global sales. It is difficult to imagine what Israel would look like today without that investment, and I'm proud to be honoring this exceptional contribution here with you. Now, we all know that these are challenging times, but as always, challenge and opportunity come together. Externally, we still face an aggressive Iran and its proxies right on our borders. Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in Gaza never stop challenging us, and we will not stop fighting to protect ourselves. But we have also seen how our strong defense can do more than just protect us, how they can help create a new reality. Just a few weeks ago, we saw a historic peace deal between Israel and some of its Arab neighbors. Our status as a regional power went toward building bridges, making alliances possible that once seemed like fantasy. This proud peace has a lot to offer, and I know we will use it to help this region grow and become a safer place for everyone. As a defense minister, it is important to me that we will leverage our defense ability to their best possible use, securing peace. And as an Israeli leader and a Jew, I know that our inner strength depends on something even more important, our sense of belonging to one another. Even when things get tough, we need to be able to go beyond our differences and remember that there is so much we share. My friends, I know that our ties go deeper than any one crisis, and I know that you have not let it stop you and your important work either. Let me share wishes of Shana Tova. May it be a sweeter, healthier, and happier new year for us all.
Thank you, Minister Gantz, for your support. I'm Sara Friedman, International Director of Business Development for Israel Bonds, and speaking to you from Tel Aviv. I'm happy to welcome you to the final installment of the Israel Bonds High Holiday Series. Many of you know me from Israel Bonds delegations to Israel, during which I've had the opportunity to showcase exceptional and interesting sites as well as fascinating people. While I eagerly await your return to Israel, we are excited to bring this archaeological experience to your home. The town of Korazaim was first mentioned in sources from the Second Temple period, and it flourished at the end of the Talmudic period. Guiding us through this ancient site will be archaeologist Achia Cohen-Tavor from Dagesh Tourist Archaeology. Achia is currently a PhD candidate at Ariel University and is an experienced field archaeologist. His excavations have included the Kotel tunnels, Ramleh, Yodfat, and the ancient synagogues at Arbel and Korazaim, of course. Now, let's join Laura and Achia as they lead us on a journey back in time.
Shalom.
Shalom, hello. I'm Laura Orzi. I'm the International Chair of Women's Division of Israel Bonds. And I want to introduce you to Achia, the archaeologist of this archaeological site and experience at Korazaim. We are here today on the banks, on the beautiful banks, the northern banks of the Galilee, and we have the opportunity to learn and to spend the day with him and to learn about this incredible experience. Women's Division is hosting this event, and I want to thank you so much for spending time with us, and we're really excited and for the opportunity and to learn so much about this phenomenal expedition.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and welcome to Korazaim. And I'm very happy to host you here today. And we're going to make like a virtual tour here. I'll give you as much experience as you can experience from overseas. I would like, of course, to have you here at Israel, but at the moment we'll have to do with a virtual thing. So, what is Korazaim to begin with? Korazaim is a Jewish village, a biblical village. Is being here like Jewish people were living here at Korazaim for about a millennia. And my job as an archaeologist is to get to know these people and maybe even to tell their story. So that's what we are going to do now, today, in the next hour or so, to try to get to know those people who are not here for about a millennia. So the first station I'll take you is actually looking for the first Jews coming here in around the Second Temple period, maybe 100 BC or so, with the Hasmoneans conquering the Galilee and settling Jews over here. So let's go to our first stop here. So, actually, what is archaeology? Archaeology for me is getting to know those people, as I said, and the problem is that they never left us any Facebook post or anything. We just have to know them by what they left behind, which is not much, but still it's a story to tell. Now, there have been here excavations since now 1907, but nobody ever found the Jews, the first Jews that settled here at, as I said, 100 BC with the Hasmoneans plus minus in the Second Temple era. We want to find them. We want to find their houses and maybe even their synagogue. because we now know, in the last decade or two, we know that there were synagogues in the time of the temple, meaning people prayed in synagogues, learned Torah in synagogues while the temple in Jerusalem was active. And how does a synagogue from the Second Temple look like? We know it from other sites that we have a hall with benches all around it and columns inside. And a couple of years ago, we stumbled upon this corner, which was not excavated then, and we saw this large walls running down here with columns inside. So we thought that just might be the Second Temple period synagogue. Is it or not? You have to excavate to find that. You have to date it. You have to find pottery. You have to find coins inside that can date it. So we really did excavate that, and unfortunately it is not dated to the Second Temple period, so it is not a synagogue. Later synagogues are built differently, and we'll see that later. So it was a nice experience. We did get to know some of the people living here. It's a domestic house and not a synagogue, but still it was very exciting to think that we might stumble on that synagogue. Now, next thing, we're gonna get to one of those people's very interesting parts of the house, which would be the mikveh. So follow me. Now, what I'm looking here inside is a cistern, a stepped cistern, meaning there are steps going inside. And as I told you, it is a mikveh. And how do we know? Because there is no other cistern, water cistern, that you would have people walking in with steps like you do have here. So what they used here is rainwater. Rainwater in Israel is very scarce, and you have to use it very carefully. People that used water just for ritual bathing, it's not cleaning, it's not the cleansing thing, it's the issue of purity. And purity and being clean is two different things. They bathe themselves in this mikveh, and what we are used to, that women bathe in mikveh once a month between the ages so and so and so and so. They had it differently. Those people back in the Talmudic era, about 1500 years ago, living here, bathed when they ate, before they ate. And why is that? Because the fruits of the Holy Land has holiness in them, and you can't eat the Holy Land fruits when you are impure. So before you eat those fruits, you have to bathe in the mikveh, and then you can go eat. So the mikveh was in daily use for everybody. Now you might see that the water here are not too clean. Now we are filming at early spring, but the water here are not in a very good condition. Probably in those days they kept it in a better condition, but we don't have rain here between, say, May and November. So between this half year you have to keep the water in order to be able to bathe, and more importantly to drink. There are no other water. And those people bathe in that for half a year. before the next rain. I do appreciate that, and I do appreciate me having the possibility in the end of this day having a nice cold shower. They didn't really have this option. It wasn't as good. The halacha says that you can bathe in a ritual bath in a mikveh as long as the water are clean enough for a dog to drink from. So you can imagine that the limits here are very wide, and I hope they did get better water usually to use. So this is one of the things that you can relate to, and something that maybe you know from your daily life and can see the difference between how they used it here back 1500 years ago and today. Now, let's go to our next stop, which will be the house, the domestic house. Okay, now we're going in to a house, a domestic house, one of the wealthiest houses in Korazaim, which we are currently excavating, not today, but you'll see how and why. Here you go. Careful, mind your step. Now, I know this looks to you like a mumble jumble, but believe me, it's a house. Like, if you can take a look and you see around me there are remains of walls, lined stones, which were walls. This house was inhabited, as I said, for about a millennia. It was, people left it in the 11th century, like exactly a millennia ago. Where did they go, and why did they leave Korazaim for good? It's a good question we're working on now. Shalom everybody. So I'm Achia Cohen Tavor. I'm the archaeologist that leading you today through the ruins of Korazaim. I was asked to introduce myself a bit, so first I'll begin that I'm married with Hannah, my wife, and she's also the boss of my job, which is great. We have 3 boys and a small daughter, 7 to 16, so a full house, fortunately. And what I'm doing in my daily life, I think, and I hope you would find also, is very interesting, very elaborate work, dealing with very different people. First, I have to work with people all over, mainly people coming from abroad when COVID is not around. But actually, we are all looking for the ancient people. The ancient people, for me, are not just people that were there. The ancient people, for me, are more like a heritage, people to learn from. You know, the elders are always considered the more wise people. And those people are older than us, for sure. They gathered through millennia of Jewish presence in Israel, in the Holy Land. They gathered a lot of knowledge and wisdom. And in my small corner, I'm trying to get this. I'm trying to relate to them, and I'm trying to get something to learn from them onwards. Time is very elusive. Time is very, as we go, we don't notice it. We have the watch, right, following us, but when you look back 100 years ago to your ancestors, you look back a millennia and more to the biblical times, to the rabbinical times, it gives you totally different proportions, and I hope you'll follow that through the videos. And people are people. Eventually, we are all the same. We have to live in a certain place, and we have to move on with what we have in our hands. I believe personally that all the difference between people living in Korazaim 1500 years ago, when the Talmud was written, the Mishnah was written there, the only difference between them and us is the technology. So we are talking now, we've got these fabulous tools of broadcasting all over, live, amazing. And they didn't even see a picture of an elephant, not talking about Manhattan, for instance, right? But they had their own life in that place. And I do believe that we can learn a lot from them by comparing our life and their lives. Everybody's life, as the Talmud says, every single person's life is a whole world, is a complete world. By that you can follow people and learn about it. And this is what I'm trying to do with you today, and we'll speak again later.
Shalom. I am Laura Stein, Chair of the Los Angeles Women's Division. I'm sure everyone is enjoying today's program. Ahia will return in a moment to guide us through another fascinating section of Korazaim. First, however, I want to introduce two remarkable women, Minister of Diaspora Affairs Omer Yankelevich and Lori Palatnik, Founding Director of Momentum. Minister Yankelevich is the first Haredi woman to be appointed to a cabinet position, while Lori leads an organization which, since 2008, has encouraged women to change the world through devoted adherence to Jewish values. In partnership with the Diaspora Ministry, Momentum has brought over 10,000 women to Israel. I invite you to be inspired by the empowering words of Minister Yankelevich and Lori Palatnik.
Mazal Tov Israel Bonds on 70 incredible years. Thank you for your commitment to the State of Israel. Since opening its doors, Israel Bonds has invested in the relationship between Israel and the world Jewry. Today, maintaining and expanding the mutual investment between the Jewish people is more important than ever. Know that in the same way Israel Bonds has been a constant partner to Israel, we too are here for Jewish communities around the world. I see it as my duty to be the address for world Jewry, your address within the government of Israel. We are focused on filling in the gaps brought on by Corona in Jewish communities around the world. It is the duty for everyone across the Jewish world to support and uplift each other during this time. Our investment must always be mutual. Friends, thank you again and Mazal Tov. I wish you all only Hatzlacha and growth in your next 70 years. On behalf of myself, my family, and the State of Israel, I wish you a heartfelt Shana Tova. תחל שנה וברכותיה, שנה טובה ומתוקה מירושלים.
Hi, I'm Lori Palatnik, the founding director of Momentum. Like many Jewish moms, you probably had kids who received Israel bonds for their bar and bat mitzvahs. So at the time, my kids were like, what, I have to wait years for this? Well, fast forward 5 years from that bond, and they were able to cash them in. And that was the money that they used to help get them to Israel for their gap year. Now 3 out of 5 of our children are living in Israel, and we're not giving up on the other 2. Mazel tov to Israel Bonds on their 70th anniversary. Wow. You plant seeds. You connect people to Israel. You give children the opportunity to be patient and to wait. And look at the result. May you continue to be blessed with many, many more years of connection. Mazel tov.
The most famous excavation at Korazaim is its beautiful synagogue. Built approximately at the end of the 4th century or beginning of the 5th century CE, the synagogue was constructed with basalt, the most common stone in the region. This year, when so many of us were unable to attend services for the high holidays, we wanted you to gain a unique perspective of our shared heritage through the prism of one of Israel's ancient synagogues. So now, let's keep exploring.
So, you should look up here, and you probably know this is a synagogue. And this is a Talmudic era synagogue, meaning 4th, 5th century synagogue. And some of it is reconstructed though, but still, when you go in, we will go in soon, try to think of the work and the effort they put, the community put in this, because of course they had no governmental funds for that. The people had to save some money from the wine, from the olive oil and so on, and to put it in work and in artists to make this magnificent synagogue here. This is all curved, as I said, from basalt. Basalt is a very, very hard stone, and this is actually the most elaborate basalt synagogue ever. And we will see some of the decorations. Take a look around where we go in. Okay, welcome into the synagogue. As I said, about Talmudic era synagogue. Now, it was excavated 100 years ago and 40 years ago, and you see we're starting a new excavation here, and I'll tell you soon what it is about. But take a look at the synagogue. There are a few questions you should ask yourself when you go into a synagogue. Probably most of us have been to a synagogue. Now, a synagogue always facing what? Facing Jerusalem, right? And here, Jerusalem is into the south. South is there. Where you're standing, that, right? In the entrance. And why should people pray into the entrance instead of the cupboard, the Holy Ark? Where is the Holy Ark standing here? First question. Second, probably some of you have already noticed that the decorations here would resemble something like more like, say, a Greek or Roman temple rather than a synagogue. We have here a decoration of Medusa, the one from the Greek mythology. What is she doing in a synagogue? Otherwise, another thing missing in this synagogue is probably you would think the women's court. There's no division here. You can't divide this hall. I mean, we didn't find any division here. And this is, in all the ancient synagogues, we have those things. Facing Jerusalem, the entrance, rather than the ark. Secondly, Roman Hellenistic architecture, and no division between men and women. To the men and women issue, first, there are a few options, okay? We don't have a real answer. First is that women didn't pray at all. Second is that prayed in different hours. And the third would be that they prayed together. What probably some of you wouldn't expect from an ancient time synagogue. It's possibilities we don't really know. You can pick up your possibility. Secondly, the facing Jerusalem thing is, as a person who prays, goes to synagogue in Shabbat here and there, I can tell you why the entrance is facing Jerusalem. Because when you are entrancing the synagogue in Shabbat and you are late for prayer, everybody can see that you're late. No, that's a joke. I don't know. We don't really know why they did it, but they had a different view of how synagogues look. Definitely talking about all the decorations, as I said, Medusa and all the Greek and Roman columns and so on. So for me, what it tells me, before even I start to ask why and where did they get the influence from and so on, we and them probably have different views of what is a synagogue. Makes you wonder, makes you think about maybe even other things different. And I would begin to answer, not that I have the answers of course, but I would begin to answer, say me wearing denim doesn't make me an American person. Maybe those people, probably those people praying here didn't believe in Medusa. They didn't pray to Medusa, they did pray to the Jewish Lord. Probably that Medusa and other Hellenistic ornaments here are just for the decoration. They didn't have any liturgical meaning to them. Okay, so these two coins were found in the synagogue this morning, fresh. Fresh meaning first, probably 4th to 5th century. You can see, I mean, it doesn't look like much, but when we take it into the laboratory and clean it, we can give it a date, which is of course very important as archaeologists trying to understand the civilization and the people living here. They had a weird habit of putting lots and lots of coins beneath the floor in the 4th, 5th century when they built the synagogue. So we just started this excavation. We're going to talk about it in a minute. And we already have a couple of coins here. That's for you. Now, what is the current excavation is about? As I told you, we know that Korazaim was inhabited from the 1st century by Jews, brought in here by the Hasmonean to settle the Galilee. We know from the current research that those people already had synagogues, as I told you before. Now, where is that synagogue? We didn't find it anywhere else, but we do find pieces of architecture typical for the 1st century scattered around in later buildings. This synagogue, which when we're standing in its entrance, is dated 4th, 5th century. So where is a synagogue of the 1st century? The synagogue from the time of the temple, by the way, in which Jesus himself preached. It says so in the New Testament. It would be immense to find a 1st century synagogue, as we have only about 10 of them total. And I would really like to get the ancient, the Second Temple synagogue of Korazaim. Why we excavate here? The excavation back then, 40 years ago and 100 years ago, didn't cover what's going underneath this building. They didn't believe, they didn't know actually about synagogues of the 1st century. As we have now other synagogues we excavate, like the synagogue of Arbel, not far down here, I excavated a couple of years ago. we have the Second Temple synagogue beneath the later Talmudic 4th, 5th century synagogue. So this is why you see we're opening the floor of the synagogue and going down. For me, it's maybe one of the most important and exciting excavations I ever did. Now, I can't tell you much because, as you see, we just begun. But if you follow us, you probably will see in a couple of weeks, maybe a month, we'll have an answer, hopefully. Do we have underneath our feet here a 1st century synagogue, which would be immense. Now, let's take a look at what's going on here. Yalla, yalla. This room, just outside the synagogue, you see it has benches. No. It has benches all around. It's a long room with benches around. We do believe that there is a possibility that this was the Beit Midrash, where they learned, they taught Torah and so on. This is, again, from this morning, we have the floor of the Beit Midrash made of these large blocks, and it's ongoing. I have no idea what we have an inch beneath our feet. What would be the big prize again would be to lift those stones, open the floor of this Beit Midrash, and maybe again finding the former synagogue down here. And so to close the things up here, I hope you got some of the excitement that we have here in the field. Maybe you got some taste of coming yourself and having the first-hand experience, meeting those people, making history yourself. And making history is about those small pieces, the coins, the pottery, the glass, the bones finds that makes our story of those people of ancient Korazaim, getting to know them a bit, just here and there.
Shalom, I'm Cathy Distelburger from New City, New York, and I'm the incoming chair of National Women's Division. Ladies and gentlemen, today's program, coming so close to the high holidays, reminds us all of our unbreakable connection to Israel, a connection spanning time, continents, and generations. Although we are participating from diverse locations around the globe, today's exploration underscores in a most dramatic and impactful way what this land means to all of us. Israel Bonds are your direct, meaningful, and personal connection with Israel. With the Bonds organization now celebrating its 70th anniversary, your support will make you part of a 7-decade legacy of achievement that has developed Israel in amazing and transformative ways. U.S. participants can invest in Israel Bonds via the virtual tab card in the High Holidays section of israelbonds.com or by calling the number on the screen. Others can receive information via the applicable websites and phone numbers that have been displayed throughout the program. U.S. participants can scan the QR code as well. Registered representatives can answer all your investment questions. Don't forget the added value of Israel Bonds, whereby you can donate them to your favorite causes or give them as gifts of simchas of every kind. Thank you for your support and enjoy the rest of our program.
Thank you, Cathy. And now for our final look at this incredible site, Achia will show us the olive and wine presses, which were so important to the culture and economy of Korazaim.
Now, if you would be here, and the first thing it would be that I would ask you, what do you think this installation is? And people would usually say something like bathroom or a cistern or something like that. But you see, it's an open place, and it doesn't really make a good sense. You see, we have here decorated mosaic and a kind of a vat beneath it with steps going down. The story how we find it is interesting, because when we excavated the house about a couple of years ago, some of the workers saw that we have tessera, mosaic stones, lying down here, and they said, listen, you should check this out. And we came here and we found this beautiful mosaic floor with this weird stone in the middle. What does that make to me? For me as an archaeologist, I know from the first glance, this is a wine press, meaning people made the wine here. You can imagine that the family probably living in this house had their wine press here. Late, say, September, something like that, they picking their grapes from somewhere in the hills around, the whole family coming with the grapes, putting them on the threading floor, hopefully washing their feet before, and then threading them to get the juice out, and the juice runs down into the vat, the grape juice, and in the middle of that mosaic floor there was a column, a screw made of wood to repress it, a secondary press to get every drop of juice into that vat. And why is wine important? First, it's something to drink. Secondly, it makes you happy, at least some of us. Thirdly, of course, kiddush. And fourth, which is again a bit different from what we experience, alcohol does not only make you lighter, it also disinfects the water, because as you've seen, the water wasn't always that clean. And when you mix water with your wine, you disinfect it, and then you get your water clean from bacteria. So they made wine here, they probably drank some of it, and of course they sold it out to make a living. So this is one thing we know more about those people. They made some of their living from wine and selling wine outside. Next up would be another source of making a living here at Korazaim. Okay, now you have a marvelous opportunity to go into an ongoing excavation happening right now. We are now in an olive press. We were at the wine press, we are moving into an olive press. This is brand new, we just found this morning. An olive press made of the crushing wheel, which is broken by now, turning here, crushing the olives and getting the olive oil out. And there is a base of again a huge wooden screw. The wine press screw is smaller because the olive are much harder than grape. The olive press is much more massive. You can't crush it by your feet. You have to use the wheel, and then this base, you should imagine here standing a huge frame made of wood with a wooden screw going down and pressing, secondary pressing again to get every drop of oil out, which is of course a very precious liquid. We have here 6 olive presses found so far. Probably there were more before, meaning that they produced olive oil as they're living and marketed it probably all over the country, maybe all over the world, and made their living from that. So they probably had wheat to make their bread from. They did have olive oil and wine that they made here, and sheep. We find, as we go in the excavation, we find sheep bones, cattle bones. They didn't have chickens, by the way. They didn't eat chicken from, I don't know, they weren't Ashkenazi probably. And so you get a piece by piece something to learn about the ancient people of Korazaim living here. Now, I can't tell you all the story of this olive press because it's ongoing work, and maybe you can take a look here, which is, I mean, I'm just seeing that for the first time. You can see a round stone here with a square inside, which is another crushing stone incorporated into the floor, meaning this went out of use in some day, incorporated into the floor. So why do they need 2 or 3 crushing stones in one olive press? It's a question that I have to start thinking of now on. You probably should follow what we're doing here and see what's coming up on the work. So I think this would be a good place to maybe to pause and have some questions from the audience if you like.
So we only have time for a few questions. And our first question comes from Orly Zorbaron, who is a member of New York Women's Division Council.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Achia. Kol hakavod. I just wanted to go back to the synagogue and find out, in your opinion, why the Jews of Korazaim, who came with the Hashmonaim, would have such a heavy Greek influence in their synagogue. Thank you.
That's a great question. Now, I started to talk about, remember the denim, American or not, but this is again a question of people and how people relate to each other. We think of ourselves as Jews, we identify ourselves as Jews and relate to ancient Jews, of course, but actually we also relate to our neighbors. Maybe we even less feel it as we go in our daily lives, but we're very much influenced by our neighbors, which are not necessarily Jewish. For instance, this is an oil lamp. This oil lamp dates to the Hasmonean times, 2100 years old. And this is what people used at the Hasmonean times to light, as I use a computer. This is just technology. And people actually use what they have and they are influenced from the people around. Also concerning culture. We look at Hasmoneans back and think, okay, they were fighting Hellenistic. Yes, they were, in a sense, but in many other ways, they were incorporated in their culture, like we are all incorporated into the Western culture just now. Again, it's something to learn from people back then on us.
Our final question is from Cleveland Women Division Chair Debbie Slater.
Shalom, what a beautiful program and event. Thank you so much. So did you ever feel as though you established a connection through time with one of the Korazaim's residents by uncovering a personal item such as a piece of jewelry?
Wow, that's great, because I just have here, I'll try to show you. This is, yes, you see it now, coins, gold and silver coins from ancient times. This, maybe you see, they are punctured. This was found by a 6-year-old girl, 23 gold cachet here. And actually it belonged to a woman. Maybe you remember the Bedouin women having coins weaved into the clothes. And this is why, because this is their own property. So women's property, personal property, nobody can touch it. That's why it's on their clothes. Now, this was a lot of money by then, owned by a woman. And one day, she put all that money, which is a lot of money, under a stone and vanished. Never came back. Why did she never came back? I don't know. We can start speculate, but it is very interesting to think of that specific women that we are holding the coins that belong to her, and trying to think of her life. And I do really relate to this woman of ancient time, trying to speculate, why did she put it there and why did she never came back?
Thank you, Achia, for this wonderful tour. We can't wait to see how this excavation progresses and hope to assist you on the dig in future Bonds delegations. To everyone from the US, Canada, and Latin America who have joined us today, we are truly gratified by your participation and continued support of Israel Bonds. Until next time, stay healthy and safe. Lehitraot.